Welcome to Divorce Coalition Live, where we share our knowledge in the fight against domestic abuse in all forms. I'm your host, Beverly Price, and I represent a group of top divorce podcast hosts and divorce professionals who have united to carry the message of domestic abuse. While this live show and some information on our website is valuable to individuals, the coalition itself will work through the professional side of divorce involving domestic abuse. This involves, legal professionals, court systems, etc. Through this show, you'll gain valuable insights on all aspects of domestic abuse, from personal stories to emotional to legal issues as well. With expert guests, practical advice, and enlightening conversations, you'll find that knowledge truly is power, and you too can create change. You don't have to face this alone. Let's start this journey together and create a better future. So without further ado, let's get started. I am so excited to introduce my guest to you today. I respect her, I admire her, and her work fits so beautifully into the mission of the Divorce Coalition. Her name is Lori Barkus. She is an attorney of sustainable family solutions and practices family law in South Florida and Colorado. She's here to talk about an important subject: the biggest mistakes someone who is a victim or survivor of domestic abuse can make in divorce. What an important topic. Lori, I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for being my guest. I know it's super early where you are.
That it is, but it's a true pleasure to be here, Beverly, and I echo everything you say. I have the greatest respect for you and what you do, and I look forward to our continuing partnerships, and I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion on what is a very, very important topic.
Absolutely. And so overlooked, I think.
Yes.
So before we get started with the topic, can you tell the audience a little bit more about you and maybe how you came to do what you do?
Okay, absolutely. I have been in the field of family law for a couple of decades, and hedging around that one, but quite a long time. I started in Florida, where I am from, and I had opened my own firm. I've worn many hats in this arena, from an attorney, a collaborative attorney, a litigating attorney, a mediator, guardian ad litem, and basically, when we launched Sustainable Family Solutions, which now operates in Colorado and South Florida, the mission was to take all of that knowledge and see what we could do about a process that doesn't really succeed very much, for lack of a better word. So our goal was to help women have a successful divorce. And in doing that, what we found that there's a lot of mistakes that are very common, and that there's a common thread a lot of times in those mistakes, in that there's a coercion, a control, or an outright abuse going on that causes people to go down the path that leads them to make less than favorable decisions in divorce.
Absolutely. I know that I've seen some studies that talk about how often I use the term victim/survivor because many people that are the recipient of abuse want to be called survivor instead of victim. I use the term victim more for someone that hasn't yet got out of their situation. So, one of the things that studies show is that so many women going through divorce with a history of abuse in their relationship feel re-traumatized by the divorce process and the system. So that, I think, adds another layer of why your topic is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is sadly very, very common, because the things that people are a lot of times burying or just trying not to deal with as they go by the day to day now have to come to the surface, and those things need to be addressed. And a lot comes to light, and re-traumatized is definitely an accurate description of what we've seen. Yes.
So how can a woman going through or thinking about divorce, let's say, what can a woman who is abused do to prepare for divorce? And how might that be a little different from a woman who isn't going through a divorce?
Absolutely. We talk a lot, prepare is a great word. We talk a lot about plan, strategize, and prepare, and all the more important when you are a victim or survivor of domestic violence, because this is going to be an especially rough process. Mm-hmm. This is going to be something where the person on the other side is going to try to force you to quit, force you to back down,
right,
or even possibly try to destroy you financially, emotionally, mentally. And so knowing that at the outset, as scary as that sounds, it's better to know and understand that at the outset, so that when something happens in the process, you're not completely taken by surprise.
Right.
And we talk about that from all the aspects: financially preparing, mentally and emotionally. And one of the things that we try to do in our practice is partner with our clients, create a plan, and help you succeed, so that you have the right support in place when you go through this process, not just your legal team,
right,
but mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely. One of the things that I urge victims to do if they're considering leaving is, number one, do not tell your abuser you are leaving. Do not tell your abuser you want a divorce. And do not leave the abuser without expert advice and a safety plan.
Absolutely.
Current statistics show that 70% of women that leave an abuser, 70% are murdered. So that safety plan is absolutely critical to being safe, to have a plan. But we also know that it takes 7 times for a woman to get away from the abuser. And I think many people's statement is just, why doesn't she leave? But I don't think they really comprehend the complexity of that abuser-victim relationship and how intimidating that can be.
Absolutely, as well as the level of control.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I think the term coercive control isn't necessarily widely understood, but I think it's kind of an umbrella that suggests that it's any abuse that's subject to and based on power and control. And in fact, power and control is the reason for all abuse. It is not the victim's fault, but it is the driven need of the abuser.
Absolutely.
What are a few things you think or you wish that, let's say we know men are being abused, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 3 women. What are some of the things you wish people knew about going through divorce in this situation?
Absolutely. One of them, and again, this really goes strongly back to preparation. There's a narrative that's been going on, and that narrative is only going to increase. And more likely than not, the person going through divorce that is the victim or survivor of abuse is going to hear things like, you can't make it on your own. You're going to get nothing. You don't deserve anything. I'm going to make sure you don't have anything. You won't ever see the kids. I will destroy you, things like that. Mm-hmm. And that narrative is very powerful because this person has led the victim or survivor to believe these things.
Right.
So when these things come out in the process, it takes a tremendous amount of strength to leave, to file. And then once this person files, that narrative starts again.
Yeah.
And it's really important to recognize that's a narrative. That is a story that is being told by this person who seeks to control you. It is not truth. It is not gospel. I've heard people tell me things that are just complete opposite of what courts do, but they're so controlled by another person that they believe it.
Right.
And that's so recognizing that, understanding it, and having a plan of what you're going to do. And again, not just your lawyer who's going to tell you legally what your rights and responsibilities are, a coach or a therapist that's working side by side with you so that they can help you through that in those moments when the unconscious kicks in and you just want to go back because this person is telling you all of these things that are truly scary to hear. And
Absolutely.
probably at the moment, but are not true.
And I think a lot of it is financial fear, because they've been cut off from money. They've been cut off from people around them to have a support system. And then also children, very concerned about them in the process as well. The other thing I've noticed is there's also what we call post-separation abuse, where this abuser pretty much continues to torture, stalk, whatever, women even after the divorce is complete.
Yes, we do see that a lot. It can take many forms. It can be showing up. It can be messaging. It can be sending messages through others. And sometimes it's even the 180 of it, trying to get a reconciliation, trying to lure this person back into a situation. When threats don't work, sometimes it's promises of change, things like that. And it can be a very, very powerful thing because, again, there is this narrative, there is this dynamic that somebody's been living under, and everything that's happening, this person has, chances are, convinced you about everything being true, about you're not being able to make it on your own, or things like that. And there are some very real concerns around children and what's going to happen, and whether this abusive person will have custody, and what that will mean.
Gotcha. I think sometimes another fear is the cost of divorce and the intimidating numbers of attorney's fees and other costs in a divorce. Can you explain this concept of retainer attorney's fees for everybody to understand?
Okay, absolutely. Most attorneys work on what's called a retainer system, which means that they ask for a sum of money up front, which is put into an attorney's trust account. And as they do work on your case, they draw on that money by sending you bills every month, every 2 weeks, whatever the system may be. If the attorney runs out of that retainer, the attorney will likely ask for another retainer. And that can be very daunting and scary. And that can make people think, well, I can't get an attorney. I don't have money. It's his money. It's her money. It's not my money. I don't have access to it. But this is not a process you want to go through alone.
Right.
You want to talk to an attorney who has the experience to tell you how you're going to navigate that. And either whether it's setting aside funds so that you can pay, there are financing options available in these situations. And there's also a path to getting your spouse to pay those fees. And you're going to hear over and over again, I'll never pay it. I'll never pay it. I'll never pay it. Everybody says that. But
the court can order it, right?
The court can order it, and the court can make that happen. And if there are assets, those assets can be used to pay those fees. Because rest assured, the person who's telling you all of this has an attorney or is getting legal advice. Even if they tell you they don't have an attorney, vast majority of the time they've spoken to somebody, and because they want to understand the narrative so they can control it. So if they're talking to an attorney, if they have access to an attorney, you should have access to an attorney as well.
Now, you mentioned financing options. Can you talk a little bit about that? Where somebody would go to learn about those?
Okay, well, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that we have people look at is, are there friends or family who can help you, who can offer you a short-term loan or advance some funds? We also have, there are legal financing options that are available. Our firm does that. We work with a company that does that. And they do a credit check, but it's a soft credit check. It doesn't really affect your credit. And most people can qualify, so that if they're in a situation, if somebody's in a situation where they've been financially cut off and they need relief, they need an attorney to help them get temporary support, help them get this process started, they can get financing at the outset. And I bring this up because I don't want people to think if your spouse has cut you off, you just, you're totally isolated and you have to do
exactly.
And once this financing is in place, it will likely be considered a marital debt. I mean, that is a state by state thing, but again, your spouse is going to tell you that's your debt. It is not.
Right.
If you needed money to access a lawyer.
One of the things that really sends my radar up is when a client tells me that the abuser has told them that he wants them both to go through mediation without attorneys.
Yes.
And that sets off alarm bells to me, because if you think about it, the abuser is so much into power and control. Maybe they're using this tactic to not disclose, to manipulate you and the end result. What are your thoughts on that concept, and also on mediation in abuse cases?
Well, mediation can be a great tool if there's a level playing field and two people go into it genuinely wanting to come to some resolution, to keep their children out of the process, to not spend a lot of money. But I agree with you, when somebody who's in a position of financial control says, well, no, you don't want to go to a lawyer, just go to mediation. Trust me, I'll be fair. Or if you don't go, I'll destroy you, which really tells you their intentions. The mediation process will not protect you.
Right.
And chances are you'll go to mediation down the road in a case, but if you go to mediation without an attorney, you now have to advocate for yourself. There's another person in that room who should try to make sure that there's a balance of power, but they can only do so much. They can't advocate for you.
Right.
And I agree, Beverly, wholeheartedly. My sense is that's a tactic of saying, I want to make sure I only give you X. I already know you should get more than that.
Right.
But I want to make sure that I come away with more than I should. And I'm going to use this process to do that, because I already know, me as the abuser, that if I go to court, I'm going to have to pay you more. I've already figured that out. I'm not telling you that.
Right.
I'm going to be fair, but that's really what I've done. And sadly, I think that can happen in the collaborative process too, which I really support under the right circumstances. But when it comes to a situation where there's abuse, the question I always ask clients is, do you feel comfortable standing up for yourself, advocating for yourself, being in a room with this person and saying, this is what I want, I'm not prepared to back down? If the answer is no, then that's not the right process for you.
Absolutely. And I think a piece to add to that is, so many people come through the marital abuse beaten down. Yes. Emotionally, verbally. They've been told they're not worthy, so that it becomes very difficult for them to stand up for themselves, because they never stood up for themselves in the marriage because of the consequences. So the other issue that I see happening is people that come in and almost make the attorney all-knowing of every single thing about abuse and every single thing about divorce. And that's an unrealistic expectation. Plus, it prevents you from being an advocate for yourself, from asking questions. And I see so many people go, well, why didn't the attorney tell me that? And my question is, did you ask for that information?
Absolutely. the right balance is so important. It's similar to when somebody hires an overly aggressive attorney because they just want to hide behind somebody that they think is going to protect them. And that's going to backfire for a whole list of reasons as well. You need to partner with somebody. You need somebody who understands your situation. That's why your initial meeting with an attorney is so important. And, to do a 15, 20-minute free consultation, that person's never going to understand. They're not focused. They're too busy trying to get your money as opposed to understanding you and your needs. And this process does need to be more comprehensive and more holistic. There really does need to be a team. There needs to be somebody with a mental health background helping, not giving legal advice, but helping and being that supportive role.
Absolutely.
And the same way the attorney doesn't want to be can't be the mental health person. They're going to care. They sympathize, but their goal is to guide you through the legal process. But you also need that support. So that you can have those conversations with your attorney.
Absolutely. And what I'm right there with you. I always suggest to a client to have an attorney, a financial professional, and a divorce coach, and then bring in a therapist if there is deep trauma from abuse over time. The other thing is sometimes you can uncover that there was abuse and control long before they even got married, when they were a child in a family scenario and on. So that may involve a therapist who can dig deeper in past issues, and then the coach deals forward with the divorce process. So that's kind of what I suggest.
I agree. And another plug for therapy, a lot of times when someone's in an abusive relationship, they develop coping mechanisms. Those coping mechanisms might be drinking, there might be substance abuse, there might be anger on the part of the person who's being abused. And now they're being told, you're the angry one. You get angry. Right. You threw things at me. You did all these things. And I'm going to use that to take the kids away. And it becomes a very scary thing, because a custody battle is not for the faint of heart. It just
absolutely not.
And not only having that therapeutic support, but being able to say, if you need to go down that road, I've sought help. I've sought help. I realize I'm not perfect. I'm part of this dynamic. I am not the abuser, but I'm part of this dynamic. And I'm looking at my role. Goes an awful long way if there is a custody evaluation that needs to happen.
Wow. We're going to take a quick break, and I want to talk to you about the Divorce Coalition. We are a newly formed nonprofit of top divorce podcast hosts and other divorce professionals who have come together to carry the message of domestic abuse during divorce. We have decided that united, our reach can accomplish more than that we would do individually. As I said earlier, many victims and survivors feel re-traumatized through divorce and abuse. Now, while this live show and some information on our website is valuable to individuals, victims, survivors, friends, family, the coalition itself is working through the professional side of abuse and divorce. This includes attorneys, financial professionals, coaches, therapists, so that we can help change the face of the process. Our mission is to create change in the world of domestic abuse in the divorce process in order to change the victim and survivor experience. We work through these professionals in education, awareness, and other ways to make sure that the divorce process can support them rather than re-traumatize them. Our website is www.divorcecoalition.com. And again, if you are an individual in need of help, the suggestion is to contact the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, your local domestic abuse shelter, or your state's coalition of domestic abuse. And now we're back to the show with my incredible guest, attorney Lori Barkus. Lori, we talked a little bit about financing. So are there any other ways that a woman can go through divorce if she's exhausted all her funds. Because one of the things I've noticed is the abuser can drag out the court process, the process of motions and so forth, to the point that all her money is gone.
Mm-hmm. It is certainly a concern. And again, that's why we like to start at the outset and identify those resources. And one of the questions we ask people is, what are your resources for support? And we are looking at emotional support as well, who's going to be there for you, but can you put aside some reserves for a few months' time? And so that, or can your family help you during that time? And if not, is there any way to borrow, which again will be a marital debt?
Right.
And then the goal is to have some sort of temporary support hearing as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But what also helps with that is understanding the financial situation. So I love what you said about working with a financial professional, because this person who's dragging it out is not going to give the financial information very quickly. They're going to hide it, they're going to delay, they're going to stall. They're going to hire that aggressive lawyer and or somebody who just basically wants to delay things. And the more information you have, the easier it is to go in and say, here's what I need, Judge. I'm being starved out. No court wants to hear that. Here's the sources that are available. I need this set aside. I need this property sold. I need access to this account. I need these funds for this period of time.
Yeah. Another point that I've heard is to talk about mediation versus going forward toward litigation, is that in mediation, getting the financial information from a spouse is voluntary, versus if you go through the court process, they can be subpoenaed and have to turn over that information. Is that true? Is it true in all states? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know about all states. I think things are fairly uniform, but I don't want to speak beyond where I'm licensed. I can tell you that generally mediation without attorneys, when there's no court case filed, it is a voluntary process. I know in the mediations I've done, I encourage people to exchange information that is needed, but I don't have any authority. I can't do anything as a mediator. And again, same as collaborative, which is the concern about it. So somebody can enter that process with less than honorable intentions, not provide the information, and try to get to a settlement, which to me is always a red flag. That's why I always take the middle ground approach, that if somebody tells me they're going to be fair, I'm going to believe them. But I want the documents that show me why they're being fair. I want the financial information.
Yeah.
We'll talk to a financial professional about it if need be. And when somebody's spouse is saying, I'm going to be fair, but they don't want to provide information, that's a big red flag to me.
Absolutely.
And the court system doesn't allow that. So if you're being told otherwise, the process is designed to be transparent, and there's certain required disclosures. And Beverly, as you said, you can subpoena information beyond those.
Absolutely. Well, I think another thing that I was thinking about was what if what if a client comes into a consultation? What should they expect?
Okay, absolutely. It's a great question.
And maybe add into that, are there certain questions they should ask to evaluate or interview that attorney?
Absolutely. Okay. Fabulous question. What a client should expect is that the firm should gather information from the client beforehand. We have a pretty detailed questionnaire that we ask you to fill out as much as you're comfortable. And the attorney should review that beforehand, so that when you enter into the consultation, this isn't a meet and greet. This isn't a what's your name? What are your kids' names? The attorney's prepared. They know a bit about you, so that you can focus on really talking about the most important aspects of the case and creating a plan and a strategy. We always tell people, whether you hire us or not, our goal is at the end of the consultation, you know your next step, you know your rights, You have a plan. And the important questions to ask an attorney, you certainly want to ask about experience. You want to know who will be handling your case, because the person who does the consultation may not be. There may be other people in the firm, and you want to know that that firm assigns things to people with the right level of experience and trains them. I mean, I don't handle every case that comes in, but I personally train my attorneys.
Okay.
To make sure that they meet the standards that I would meet. So if I'm assigning your case to somebody else, I'm not passing you off to somebody who's taking on their first trial.
Okay.
And learning the ropes on you. I would also say, what is your plan for my case?
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear, well, we'll see, once you pay me this amount of money, then we'll figure it out as we go along. That's not a good answer. That person did not invest in you in that consultation. What's the plan? What is the next step? What can I expect during the process?
Right.
What does communication look like is another big one.
Oh, that is a huge one.
Yeah, because people need to know that. I mean, we have a communication policy that's part of our retainer, but it's important for clients to know, especially if you're going through trauma, understand that a couple hours time waiting for a return phone call or a response to an email may not be a lot of time to an attorney with a caseload. It's a lot of time for you, but knowing that it's going to take a couple hours is going to help you understand that. But there should be a time frame. I mean, I hear from people that attorneys don't return their calls at all, and that shocks me. I mean, that's
the number one complaint about divorce attorneys.
Yes.
Is the communication problems.
Yes.
So I love how you've kind of framed it as get the expectation set correctly. But I also would like the firm to return a call, even if you need to say, we need more time to look at this, but something that doesn't leave you hanging. Right. And it wouldn't even have to be the attorney calling you. It could be their assistant, but just so that you're not hanging out there wondering and worried, because that's what we all do in divorce.
Of course. And if you don't know, I mean, we tell people 1 to 2 business days is the normal response time. In an emergency, we are going to respond sooner. But again, and we also talk about what may feel like an emergency versus what we treat as an emergency. So what we want people to know is that's the clock for it. We also have scheduling links to our paralegals so that you don't really have to play phone tag or wait. You can jump on somebody's schedule. And again, to your point, when you'll get an answer. It may not be immediate. You're right. And there might be other things going on, but you're not going to feel like everything else is more important.
How do you find an attorney that has domestic abuse divorce experience? I know you can look up divorce lawyers, but how do you find one, and how do you know if they're good?
That is very challenging. I mean, you can look at reviews, but reviews can be subjective, and sadly, people talk about their negative perceptions more than positive, and even the positive may not apply to it. I would ask that attorney about it. Most attorneys who have done family law do have experience with domestic violence, but are they trauma informed? I'd ask that.
Now, where would they get trauma informed training?
I know that there is different training. Some of the bar associations are trying to incorporate that. In the states where I'm licensed, we are required to do a certain number of domestic violence education hours. I've also heard about different programs that attorneys can take so that they understand more, as you said, how complex this is, how re-traumatizing, how somebody who is a victim or survivor of domestic violence may not function in a way that might be expected in terms of going back and in terms of not remembering all details. I mean, I don't want to get on a tangent, but it's not uncommon to fill out an injunction for domestic violence and forget something that's significant.
Exactly.
Because again, it's so ordinary that certain things happen on a daily basis to not realize, oh, okay, well, that time that happened, that really was abuse.
What do you think that can be done to improve the victim and survivor's experience through the divorce process in, let's say, the legal community, the court system, maybe the criminal court? It seems like the process isn't necessarily victim or survivor friendly. So what needs to be done?
Ideally, and if I were to speak across the board,
Sure.
Ideally, we need a more holistic approach. We need something. A lot of people will tell you we need more training for judges and judicial staff, and I think judges are certainly open to that. But that model of making somebody go in front of a judge in that situation is traumatizing.
Right.
And something more along the lines of something that can address this in a more holistic manner with somebody who's fully trained, a more mental health approach, but also with consequences and with an understanding of, because some situations are not just going to be, okay, the two parties are going to talk to a therapist. You need a protection order,
right,
and it needs to be enforced if it's violated. So you do need that, but making somebody go in a courtroom and sit in a witness chair and be cross-examined and follow a set of
face their abuser
while
they're doing.
Right. And yes, while courts definitely need rules and procedures, that may be very challenging. And I've seen judges, I've seen judges struggle with the balance of that, of enforcing those rules and having somebody who might be acting out because they're re-traumatized in the moment. So it'd be a whole nother fascinating conversation, but I would say going in that direction.
Awesome. One of the things that I do that kind of touches on the subject we talked about at the very beginning in preparation is to remember that a divorce with abuse, the preparation isn't just pulling financials, but there are certain safety elements, such as protecting your technology is a biggie. To make sure that your spouse cannot access any communication, even if it means going to the public library, even if it means using borrowing a phone so that it can't be tracked. I think those are very important aspects of it as well.
Yes.
Much of the preparation for leaving an abuser can take a good while, like you said, saving up some money, finding out the options of where you go, finding out financial options of how to survive during that period. But I think there's the subject that you brought to the table about preparation is so key in this process.
Mm-hmm. Plan, prepare, and strategize. And I would also throw in there that find somebody who's skilled in forensics that can sweep your devices, sweep your car, sweep your house. Are there tracking devices? Are there listening devices? Are there cameras you don't know about?
So would that be a private investigator?
It's probably more a cybersecurity expert.
Okay. Okie dokie. Well, this has been just a totally educational experience, Lori. You have educated me so much into the process. I know our listeners can just find this so valuable. How can our listeners find you?
Well, our website is sustainablefamilysolutions.com. And I've also got my email, lbarkus@sustainablefamilysolutions. We've got some wonderful resources on our website about divorce, some free resources, some downloads, webinars, things that people can look at. And if they have any questions about the process or working with us, they can reach out, and one of our incredible intake specialists will guide you through the options and the next steps.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for being my guest today. This has just been a wonderful conversation that I know is so helpful. To my audience, thank you for listening and for being with Lori and myself on this episode of Divorce Coalition Live, where we fight domestic abuse throughout the divorce process. If you would like to listen to this episode again, you can find the link to our WGSN YouTube library. You can also find it at www.herdivorcecoalition.com. All of Lori's information will be available in the show notes. We also have a special gift for you, a free ebook called Stop Condoning Domestic Violence that is on the Divorce Coalition website. You can find us again at www.divorcecoalition.com and on Instagram and Facebook at Divorce Coalition page. The more we grow, the stronger we fight. Let's come together, break the silence, and champion a brighter future. Stay tuned every other Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for another episode. I so appreciate your support. Until next time, stay safe and grow.
Thank you,